Welcome back to Programming with Qt Widgets. In this episode, we'll talk about colors. We'll talk about how you get to draw a rectangle that is filled with colors. We'll talk about the outline of the rectangle. We'll talk about a class called QPalette and how it fits into the picture of actually changing the colors to your existing widgets. So, welcome. What would the world be without colors? You got a lot of the irony in me saying that. I'm so butt ugly that the production team decided better not scare away our customers with color, so let's put him in black and white. But obviously your application is not going to be black and white, so you need to add some colors there. You can choose from 3 different color schemes. I believe they're called color spaces. That's the word I was searching for. RGB, which is your usual red, green, and blue component. That is how I believe that the TVs in the old days used to work. Then we have HSV, hue, saturation, and value. And the only thing I know about that is that that makes it easier for you to do more intense colors, because you can change. See, I can't even remember if it's a hue. It's a hue. Anyway, if you know what HSV is, you'll be glad to know that you can do that. And finally, there's SMYK, SMYK, which is the colors that your printers think about. It has been seeing some support in recent version of Qt 6. So I think Qt 6.6 or maybe even Qt 6.7, or maybe it's only coming Qt 6.8. I don't recall exactly. But one of my coworkers has been working on improving the SMYK colors in Qt. What you most often do is that you work with RGB. At least if you are a color nub, as I am, or noob, color new users, unable to do stuff with colors. I can do red, green, blue, whatever. But anyway, you work with RGB. And you can specify the colors in a few different ways. You can just RGB like this, and here's your red, green, and blue color. You can specify a transparency, so how transparent should this be? You can specify it in web notation, so hash mark and then 2 hexadecimal digits for each of the colors. You can specify it by a SVG name, so red, green, blue. Or you can use it if you are, like me, unable to find 2 good colors to match. Yes, my wife is doing the color matching of my clothes. You're welcome for that information. Then you can simply go and create a color from your enum in Qt. It has red, green, blue, cyan, a few others. It's a slightly troublesome one because this enum is converting to an int. So if you are doing stuff with the model view that we'll talk about in one of the upcoming modules, then do remember to wrap it in QColor. Okay, there is one thing that I like, at least, is that on a given color you can call either .lighter or .darker to get a variant of that color that is slightly lighter or slightly darker. I don't know who came up with this API, because if you call .lighter 100, that returns you exactly the same color. If you do .lighter 50, then it will actually get you a darker color. .lighter 150 is a lighter color. I don't understand this API. Maybe you do, then please educate me in the comments below. And let me just show you a simple example. It's not really rocket science, but on the other hand, it is useful to see some code from time to time. And you can see the example running here on the screen behind me now. It is simply a text that is being painted with a certain amount of transparency. So you can see the boxes down there highlight how much transparency the text is being painted with. And then, well, the text is painted on that background with some transparency. Let's see the code for this. So my class, let's start there as always. Class starts in main, main. Oh, it was in here, main. So in main, I create an instance of my custom widget, which is this one up here. I always need to create a subclass of QWidget or one of the existing QWidgets to be able to paint stuff, because if you remember from the previous episode, you paint in your paint event, which is a virtual method. So you'll have the subclass, which is cool enough, because when you think about it, when do you actually paint pixels yourself? When you do that, when you created your own widget, whether that's a speed dial for your fancy electrical vehicle, or I don't know, something specific to your domain, then you have a widget for exactly that. And there you implement a number of virtual methods for how it behaves, the mouse press, mouse move, keyboard, whatever it has of interactions. And you implement a paint event where you will be painting what the user will be seeing on the screen. So I subclass from QWidget. My custom widget here sets up a QTimer. That's how it goes and goes through each of those different colors. The timer has a signal called timeout. Whenever that goes off, it goes into the advance. The timer is set up to 1,000 seconds. No, 1,000 milliseconds. Yes, I know by now, but maybe I should have done like this. Just press Alt return and then make the code more robust. And you see that Qt Creator, with the help of Clazy and with the plugin I did implement myself, adds now chrono up here, and then it says 1s for 1 second, much clearer. It loads in a pixmap here, and I did promise you to talk a bit about what's the difference between a pixmap and an image. Both of these looks very similar to each other these days, because a lot of the API from one has migrated into the other. But at least conceptually, maybe even more than conceptually, you can think of the pixmap as located on your GPU, ready to be moving to the screen, while the image is actually a data structure on your CPU memory, and you can easily access the individual pixels in that image, while the pixmap is optimized for being put on the screen real fast. As I said, image and pixmap are closer to each other these days, and it's super easy to go from one to the other. But if I know that what I'll be doing with this is to paint it on the screen, I can just as well get it into a pixmap right away. : that is the resource system that we saw many episodes ago by now. I say that the thingy here should have a fixed size of the size of the pixmap, because otherwise I'll just be wide around it, which won't look that good. Okay, here's my custom widget. I have this protected slots. This is really old code, trust me, so I do not need it to say slots there anymore, but hey, it does, and it doesn't do any harm. My advanced method, I simply take my m_steps, which is an instance variable that goes from 0 to 9, and every time it's increasing, I call update, which will make Qt ask me to paint myself on the screen using the paint event. I create an instance of QPainter on this, meaning I'm painting on the pixels of the screen. I am drawing the pixmap at position 0, 0, this pixmap here. Unfortunately, I set the size of the widget to be exactly the size of the pixmap, so it'll fit right on the screen. Then I create a color for my text. It's a yellow color. That's, as I said, the only colors I can do. That's those with QT : in front of them. I set the alpha value, so that's how transparent it is, to be more, less transparent the further up the steps I go. I set the pen to be this color here. I create a font by going to the painter and say, what font do you have already? Because this might be in a larger context where somebody could change the font used on this particular widget, and I just want to use whatever font they provided. So I go and ask for the font. I will crank the font up really big, 130 pixels. I will paint the font I'll set the font on the painter, and now I'm ready to paint. So at position 10, 150, so X10, Y150, I will write the word transparent, and that is in huge font because of this. It's in yellow because of this. And then I'll draw my boxes, and you can see I set the alpha to be a number that is larger here. So an alpha of 1 means opaque, and an alpha of 0, well, an alpha of 1 means no. An alpha of 256 means opaque, and an alpha of 0 means transparent, and then scale in between.
Going from Qt 5 to Qt 6 is fortunately not as bad as it was to go from Qt 3 to Qt 4, but there's still that devil in the detail. And you'll only do it once. For us, we do it every day. So talk to us, we can help.
In the example, we saw that we changed the pen by operating on an instance of QPen and then setting that pen on our painter. A pen has a number of properties that is worthwhile to know about. First of all, the pen has a color, can have a color at least, or it can have a brush. And a brush is a pattern that usually is used for filling objects. We'll see that in the next slide. But if I have a pen that's really huge, I might actually have a brush inside the pen. Why would I need that? Why would I want that? Nope, I have no idea. Sorry, but you can. Then the pen has a width. So usually you paint with a pen that is just 1 pixel wide, but sometimes you might want to paint with a different kind of size of pen. The pen has a style, and I'm just go over here to my web browser here, and you can see if you just go and look at the QPen documentation, you can see that the normal style of a pen is a solid line. So I draw something, whatever I draw is done with this. Then there is a dashed line here, dotted line, dash dot, hence the name, dash dot dot, dash dot dot. That's not SOS, but could have been dash dot dot line here, and custom dash line. That's news to me actually. I didn't know that you could do that. I have never ever had the need for a custom dash, but now I know that you can. It has a cap style. That is, how do the pen end? I draw a line from here to here. How does it, if I zoom in really much on the end of that pen, especially if it's a thick pen, how does it end? Does it end like round? Does it end like square? How does it end? And go to the cap style in the previous documentation. I'll do that for you. Cap style, pen cap style. Oh, come on, give me something I can click on. And what you need to notice is here you can see that's more round than here. So this is flat, this is square. I cannot, for the love of my God at least, see the difference between these two, but you also have the round ending in there. And finally, a pen can have a join style. That's if you draw something that goes like audio not necessarily, then the how the pen meet in these styles are the join style. These are nitty-gritty optimizations, but I'm sure that those out there that are more creative than I am will enjoy that you have those capabilities. Okay, so that was painting a regular line or something, but if you paint something that is a circle, an ellipse, or a rectangle, something else that has an inside into it, then the inside will be painted using the brush. And the brush you specify just like you did with the painter or with the pen on the painter set brush. Here's a brush, it's yellow and it's a solid pattern. And there's a few properties to the brush. There's first of all the color of the brush and the brush style. And let's go over here and see the brush style. We have that here, solid, dense 2 pattern and so on. And there is a few different brush patterns here, including gradients. So there are 3 different gradients here that you can apply inside your brush. You can also, however, set a texture there. So if you want, you can, in your commercial application that you release to the market, you can have a picture of me going, Did you get the screenshot? Good, because you can put that as a picture inside your brush, that when you draw in your application, you actually draw with my face. Why would? Never mind. Okay. That's basically it about the brush. Yeah? You had a question. Okay. Okay, we'll go back here. I hear that there is a question coming in. I have telepathic abilities for questions. No pen. When would I ever want to draw without a pen? Well, that is if you actually draw something where there's both an inside and a border, like an ellipse. There you can say that, hey, my ellipse should have this beautiful cross pattern that we have here, but whenever I don't want a border on that cross pattern. That's where you set the pen to be no pen. So Qt support 3 different kind of gradients. It supports the linear gradients where you go from one color to another color and possibly to even more colors. As you can see here, I go from this position to that position with a gradient. It also have the let me just check, radial gradient, which is like going somewhere. The white dot is at the center here, and then there's this which is the canonical gradient, which is like gradient that goes like this around, which gives you the impression, at least it gives me the impression, that you have a cone standing facing out of the picture there. No? Try again. Have a beer too. Maybe you can see it eventually. That's the 3 different gradients that are in Qt. And you specify the gradient with 3 different classes, and then once you've created a gradient, you on your brush set that gradient. And the specification of when and how it works is done using gradient set color at and position 0, half and full, red, green and blue, red, green and blue, and then you draw it in whatever way here. I can't remember how you actually made it go like this rather than this or like this, but there is an example down here, and I suggest that you look at it carefully. I'm not going to do it for you now because, well, just because. Okay, next one. You can, as I said, create pens with brushes on them. And why would you want to do that? Well, I don't know, but you can see here, I have a gradient here. The pen has a brush set on it, and the gradient is from red over green to blue, and it's a gradient that goes like this. So the only thing I'm missing here is an effect where it stands wobbling hello world and moves up and down my screen, and I've implemented a 1990s screensaver. So if you find a time machine, go back and implement that. You can again look at this example here. I don't want to walk you through each of those because it's pretty straightforward. That's it for today's episode. Tomorrow we'll talk about especially a class called QPalette. So until then, have a great time.